Hi, Rahama. Thank you so much once again for joining us for this episode of this podcast. And your products look amazing so far. And we also want, so to begin, how did Shea Yeleen start?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I was really excited to talk to you, and congratulations on your new endeavor. I think it's great to see young diaspora and trying something new, being entrepreneurial. So kudos to you guys as well. If you had asked me in college if I was going to be an entrepreneur or run a business, I would have said, what is that? No, I had no idea how to even create or start a business. So I studied political affairs and international affairs in college. Yeah. And so my plan was to be a diplomat, to be quite honest. I wanted to work at the Department of State and become a foreign service officer. And so I interned at the Department of State here in DC my senior year. And then I was sent abroad to intern in an American embassy in Burkina Faso. And so that was my path. And then, I knew I was going to do Peace Corps. Then after Peace Corps, I was going to take the foreign service exam. So that was my idea. But it wasn't until I lived in a small village in Mali as a Peace Corps volunteer that my entire ideas about what I was going to do with my career completely shifted. So I'm Ghanaian American and grew up in upstate New York and had a sense of what it was like to live in Africa through my mom's stories. But being in a village for the very first time, living in my community, going to the community health center, seeing a lot of issues around women and their ability to care for themselves and their children really impacted me and changed my mind about what I wanted to spend my time and energy in. And I started doing research initially as a volunteer on income generating activities for women, because women would come to my health center and then either they couldn't, afford the fees or they couldn't buy medicine. And I was just like, what's going on? Why can't they do things that shouldn't be as difficult, right? And so I started researching income generating activities. I learned about shea butter. Never knew that shea butter came from Africa. I'm African. I'd seen shea in so many different products. I had no clue where it came from. And so as I saw women making the shea butter, I realized there was a huge disconnect between women in Africa and the global marketplace. So we have these women isolated in these communities, taking a natural resource, hand making it, but they're not making money from it. So realizing that in the US I could get a shea product for $20 and that money was not having any sort of impact on the continent. When shea only grows in sub-Saharan Africa, you cannot find it anywhere else in the world. It impacts the lives of about 16 million women in between 19 and 21 countries. So if this product only comes from Africa, women are the traditional harvesters. You can't find a shea product anywhere in the world, and a woman in Africa wasn't impacted. Why aren't they benefiting?
Exactly.
So that was, in my early 20s, that question just nagged at me. It felt so wrong, and it also just felt very unfair.
Right.
And seeing these amazing women in their communities work so hard, want so much for themselves and for their families, yet not have the resources to financially benefit from something they were already doing, is what got me involved in the shea industry.
And so was it important for you when you were setting up a business to have that business based in Ghana, where half of your family is from?
It wasn't necessarily because of my family connection, to be honest. I started in Mali. But it wasn't until political instability in 2010, 2011 that I just didn't have the capacity to continue. And I also worked in Burkina Faso as well. It just so happens that the State Department, the American Embassy in Ghana invited me to do a workshop training for women entrepreneurs.
Right.
And I met some Shea producers in that workshop. And so we developed a connection, and then I started working with them.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So it was just like happenstance. It wasn't like intentionally I planned it. It just was the fact that I was a startup, couldn't really work in Mali after some of the issues were happening politically. And I just happened to meet these women who were amazing. They had already started, they're right outside of Tamale in the north, and they had already started, organizing themselves. They, to me, had taken the initial steps to create their cooperatives. And then for me, it was just a great partnership because I could see myself helping them with the market link. And so the women in that cooperative, one of them, Joanna, who heads it, she's actually come to the US.
Oh, wow.
And she went to the Whole Food stores that sell our products. Yeah, she got a chance to interact. Yeah, so for me, it's not just about me going over there.
Right.
Like, hey, I'm the American, trying to save people. That is something that I very strongly am against. It's more of, you're doing this, you need to be financially compensated for this. You need to be aware of the value of the product. You should also see the market for yourself. And so very fortunately, when we launched in Whole Foods, we did a program where we brought 2 of our cooperative members to come and travel to New York, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts.
Yeah, wow.
So it was me and them in a small rental car.
Wow, that's amazing. And
For 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And they got a chance to experience this side, because so often, especially when we're thinking about rural areas, they don't even get the chance to go to the capital. You know what I mean? Like, they're even confined in their own country. So they completely have no idea of the value of their product, the value of their labor, the value of what they're doing, because they just don't have that awareness.
Right.
And so for me, it was really important not only to develop a business model that sold shea butter, but a business model that gave a voice and visibility for these women to be active participants on both the supply side and the market side. So like the supply, production, and selling.
Wow. Talking more about shea butter and that. So now that we have the age of social media and the digitalization of things, how do you think the digitalization of your platform, like you selling shea butter, you have access to social media, you have a page, or you promote your products on social media. How do you think that has helped in terms of getting your message out there and also like empowering these women back home and telling their stories?
I think that being able to tell stories and doing it in a way where it's global. The internet has really made the world a much smaller place, because you don't need to hop on a plane somewhere to learn about that place. And so I think for my business, it has been tremendous. I started selling online before getting into Whole Foods and MGM. The business started through our website. And initially, being able to tell the story of how the women make the shea butter, being able to show them in their communities. And when I started Shea Yeleen, back in 2005, you really didn't hear a lot about shea butter. You didn't hear a lot about women in these communities. Now I feel like shea is everywhere. I feel like everyone and their grandmother has a shea product. It's like, when you say, I run a shea business, someone's like, I know like 10 people who run shea businesses. So I would say it's really exploded, and a lot of it has been storytelling. I've seen people who build huge presences on Instagram, in Ghana even, where they're showing how shea butter is made, where they're showing like shea butter in the villages. And I think it's fantastic. My only concern is we're still not seeing the trickle-down effect of the income, and that is the one thing, particularly when a lot of these newer brands are brands of color, are run by Black women, where we're not seeing how they're making impact on the lives of women in these small communities. So yes, it's great that social media and the internet has kind of evened out the playing field. But the question I ask is, how can we ensure that women are generating living wages, and not just fair trade, but actual living wages, where they're able to increase their standard of living, where they're able to overcome rural poverty, where they're able to, give their children a better life than they experience. And I think that's what any parent wants, right? That's what I see in my mother's experience. She was able to give a very different life for her children than she experienced as, a young girl growing up in a conservative, Northern Ghanaian family. And so I think that for me, that's one of my priorities. Is let's create a supply chain that prioritizes African women. Let's not just talk about, oh, I want that shea glow, I want my hair to look nice and poppin', and I want soft skin, yet what's happening in these communities. And I think that the internet actually can allow us to do that quicker and faster, because people can engage not only on the benefits of shea, which we all know shea butter is amazing, but also the ability it has to change the lives of women.
So how does a partnership like this look different for the women to partner with in the villages than a traditional partnership? So what are the benefits for them?
So I will say this. A lot of people don't know this, but 90% of what comes out of the continent of Africa that is shea is not even shea butter. It's shea seeds. It's the raw material. So when you see Lubriderm with shea butter, Johnson & Johnson with shea butter, that shea butter is made in India or Europe. It's not made in Africa. So that's a huge problem. Why? Because women are suppliers of a raw material where they make no money at all. Literally nothing. Because if I give you a shea seed, what are you going to do with it? Nothing. If I give you a bar of soap, you're going to use it. So that value addition piece is missing. So that's over 90% of the market. That is the biggest issue that I see, is that shea butter that enters the global marketplace is not made in Africa. So it's the same thing with crude oil, it's the same thing with diamonds, it's the same thing with chocolate. All of these things are raw material. So manufacturing happens anywhere. And if you think about it, economies improve when you're able to create something, right? We went through the Industrial Revolution over here, the tech revolution in Southeast Asian countries, all of those things, people were creating things. The ability to create allows you to make or move up the supply and value chain, which allows you to make more money. So until we see a significant amount of shea butter being made in Africa and sold globally, we're going to run up against that issue of women not being able to make sufficient money. So what does that mean? That means being able to develop manufacturing facilities. That means the requirement of electrifying the continent. Communities having access to electricity, communities having access to clean running water. All of the things that's required to create manufacturing needs to be developed in these communities. That's one, for sure. That requires the governments to be involved. That requires the private sector to be involved, so that you can absolutely change the fact that these women are unable to manufacture something. That's one. Two, the less than 10% of shea that's made and then sold globally, a lot of it is actually consumed locally, and a percentage of that is sold globally, right? So within that, that's where I play, that less than 10%. That's where Shea Yeleen operates, which is helping women take seeds, making it into butter, making it into soap, bringing that to the US. So that segment, a couple of challenges there. When you see shea butter at outdoor markets, when you see shea butter and someone's like scooping it out, selling it for $5 a pound on the streets. That person is working with multiple intermediaries. They might get the shea from a couple of different villages, bring it together, and then ship it out, and then sell it to, small businesses who then will sell it on the street. Mm-hmm. So that's the model there. There's quality issues with that model, and there's also compensation issues with that model. So let's say all of us are shea producers. Mm-hmm. And he comes along, he goes to you, he's like, hey, do you have 10 pounds of shea? You're like, yep, you give him. And he goes, down the line. The way you make your shea butter might be completely different from the way I make it and the way you make it. That would be like all of us making, I don't know what would be the common, like we could talk about like peanut stew or goosey stew, but I'm not sure. Soup. Our traditional soups. You make one pot, I make one pot, you make one pot, and then we mix it all together. Mm-hmm. How do you think that's gonna taste? Exactly. It's the same thing with shea. If you don't have a standard, consistent process that everyone is using, the quality is not going to be good. And so that is often what gets on to, the ship or whatever, comes through the ports and then sold on these streets. Mm-hmm. So quality is a huge issue. The other thing is that the women are not making significant money at all with that. The difference, so those are the two kind of main channels that Shea Butter enters the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And those are the issues and challenges that I have with each. The Shea Yeleen model is very different in that, one, we are working with women in a cooperative model. We are training them. We're giving them access to capital, access to processing centers, so that they're using a consistent process, working together to create a high quality product that we then pay them a living wage for, which is a multiplier of 5 against the Ghanaian minimum wage, giving them the ability to live at a higher standard, giving them the ability to send their kids to school, to invest in other income generating activities, to have access to their daily needs, whether it's food, medicine, local transportation, and the visibility in the marketplace. We're the only shea brand that I know of that's actually brought their women to see their products in Whole Foods. They know how much we sell the shea butter for. Mm-hmm. A lot of companies, they don't do that. Yeah. When I go, I promise you, I'm the only CEO that I know that will go and sleep in the village. Not in the 5-star hotel in Accra, but in the community with them, together. I know, I'm not going to name any of the Shea Butter CEOs I know. They're not doing that because that's not their interest. I love doing that. That's literally my favorite part of running my business. Is not being here, like doing all the stuff that you see me doing, but it's being in the community with my women. Like we are together. These are my sisters. I know them by name. They're not, And so for me, it's the financial impact, but it's also changing the role that these women have in the marketplace, and giving them the ability to understand the value that they have in the marketplace is also important.
Thank you so much for I've learned so much about shea butter and the shea industry that I literally did not know of before. I think with that, we're gonna cut off the episode here. Thank you so much once again for joining us.
Yeah.
You want to add anything?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, we learned so much. Wow.
Yeah.
And to hear the amazing impact that your company is having in the lives of the women back home, and the fact that they're able to come here as well and see their own products on the shelves, that's unheard of. So kudos to you, and you're doing a great job.
I am trying, and honestly, getting more and more people to be aware of the issues is so important. So thank you for hosting this podcast and allowing me to share my very little, journey and experience. And I really encourage your listeners, do your research. Look at how people market. Look at how people talk about impact. Look at, be critical thinkers about this, and I really hope that, you know, my goal before I die is to ensure that every single of those 16 million women actually are generating sufficient income for their work. That's what I want to do. I want to completely radicalize and change this one supply chain, because it's one of very few that impacts the lives of women in Africa. And so to your listeners, go to SheaYeleen.com, follow us on social media, see what we're doing, join us. We need great people. And yeah, thank you again.
Thank you so much. Okay.